Which leads me to question, is School Days the worst anime of all time? Honestly, no. I've seen anime worse than School Days that have far more problems.
Yeah, I knew that was going to come back to bite me in the ass someday. Sword Art Online, like School Days, is one of the most polarizing anime I've ever seen. You have the people who think it's the best thing ever, the people who enjoyed it but can acknowledge its flaws, and the people who thought it was the shits and hate it. That's 3 different perspectives right there. Sadly, however, we won't be doing the perspective system to explain Sword Art Online. Instead, we're going to break this review down into several parts, deconstructing what made the first 14 episodes, also known as the Aincrad Arc, such a piece of shit. And I know, I just heard the collective groan of many Aincrad Arc fans, but please, keep an open mind going into this review. With that said, before I start the summary of what Sword Art Online actually is, for those who don't know, and those who'd like to be refreshed, I feel like I should dispel some misconceptions that people seem to have about this anime. Number 1. Sword Art Online is an anime about a video game. It's not. Sword Art Online is about a romance that just happens to take place in a video game. More on this later. Number 2. Sword Art Online had a cool concept. It didn't. It's actually quite stupid and very nonsensical. More on this later. Number 3. Sword Art Online started off great and got terrible around the 14 episode mark. No, Sword Art Online was always pretty bad, and it certainly got worse as time went on, but I don't think for a single second that this tripe could ever really have been considered good. So, what is Sword Art Online? Sword Art Online is a series of light novels that were adapted into an anime in 2012 by A1 Pictures, who have worked on anime like Fairy Tail, Maggie, Black Butler, Blue Exorcist, and Alnoa Zero. SAO revolves around a teen named Kirito who gets trapped in a virtual reality MMORPG and must, with 10,000 other players, clear the game to get back to the real world. The catch here is that if you die in SAO, you die in real life. Along the way, he meets characters such as Klein, Agiel, Silica, Lisbeth, and Asuna. The first half's main antagonist is Kayaba Akihiko, who is the one responsible for the creation of SAO and the entrapment of all the players inside of it. With all this, you should now have a basic understanding of what SAO is, so let's not waste any time, and let's delve into what makes this arc so horrendous. I want you to imagine that a game called Sword Art Online has popped up on Steam. It's an MMORPG priced at $49.99. Now, the smart consumer wouldn't buy this game right off the bat. They'd wait for the reviews to come in before putting down this amount of money on a video game. I can tell you right now that if Sword Art Online was ever actually released, of course without the virtual reality gimmick attached to it, that it would be the worst game released that year. Total Biscuit, Jim Sterling, and Yahtzee would have a fucking field day with this game, just ripping it to shreds, because at the end of the day, Sword Art Online is a terrible game, and it hurts the anime overall, even if you don't realize it. For starters, SAO is an RPG without magic.
An RPG without magic? That's a bold decision, man!
No, it's not a bold choice, it's a stupid choice. Magic exists in RPGs for a number of reasons. Adding variety to the melee combat to gameplay is arguably the number one reason. Because SAO has no magic, this not only cheapens the gameplay, but it also makes it pretty shallow. You see, magic also has another purpose in one's arsenal, and that is for long-range attacks. If your opponent is significantly stronger than you, magic can be used to hit them from a distance and give you the upper hand. In SAO, however, there is no magic, so attacking someone from far away via mana or magic is completely out of the question. This wouldn't be so bad if SAO had ranged weapons like bows and arrows or staffs, but you guessed it, SAO has no bows and arrows or staffs. So the only way to deliver real damage to an opponent is to get up close with them, and anyone who has played an RPG before knows that this can be frustrating with certain enemies. In fact, most of them that are several levels higher than you. And before anyone says anything, I realize that the game is called Sword Art Online. Hell, the first episode of the anime is called World of Swords, which is why, of course, it makes absolute sense for there to be axes and maces in the game. Because axes and maces are swords. Swords in the game mostly inflict damage through sword skills, which are combat motions. The anime never really explains what these things are or how they work, but I'm sure that there are a lot of them. One of them, for instance, is the dual wielding skill. Now, listen to this. The dual wielding skill is given to a single player in the game as an exclusive skill. The player with the fastest reflexes in the game gets the skill. Now, how this is determined is never explained. Essentially, unless you have the fastest reflexes in the game, you cannot dual wield swords. So on top of not having magic, bows and arrows, or staffs, unless you're the fastest player in the game, you can't even dual wield. Moving on, Sword Art Online also doesn't have a job system.
The job I rolled is knight.
Dude, there's no job system in this game.
A job system in an RPG is what allows you to choose between different classes so you're not fixed into one particular job for the entire game. So in SAO, you're either a knight or not a knight. The anime shows us that it's possible to be a blacksmith, a merchant, or a cook, but in terms of being a combatant, what do you really have? You can't be a mage or an archer because SAO doesn't have those mechanics, but you could have been a hunter or a samurai or a thief because all three of these involve mechanics that SAO already has. But too bad, everyone in the game is going to be a knight. Once again, SAO kills variety for no real reason at all. Keep in mind, SAO is an MMORPG, which stands for Massively Multiplayer Online Role-Playing Game. Who would want to play an MMORPG where combat is very cheapened by the lack of magic and job system? Oh, you can be a knight in SAO? Who gives a shit? There's hundreds of MMORPGs that let you be a knight better and give you access to more classes. And that's not all. SAO also does not have respawning bosses. If a boss on a particular floor is beaten, they don't respawn. Needless to say, this kills the entire challenge of an MMO if the test of your power and grinding doesn't exist. And in a multiplayer atmosphere like this, the goal of the game is not to kill other players, it's to clear the 100 floors. I can only imagine it being boring if every time you want to find a boss, you come to find out that it's already been killed. On top of all this, Sword Art Online has horrible world building. SAO has 100 floors, and most of the locations in all of them look nearly identical. The only town of any note in the anime that is mentioned time and time again is the town of beginnings, which is on the first floor. We know fuck all about floors 2 through 76, which are explored in the anime, and by the look of it, there isn't much to know to begin with. There's locations for quests and such, yes, but for a game this large, they seem to be very few and far between. To tally that all up, we've got repetitive levels, one class to choose from in terms of combat, bosses that don't respawn, extremely limited weapon options, and gameplay that is crippled by the lack of long-range attacks. One might say that it's okay for the game to be lacking in some places because in-universe it is a virtual reality MMORPG, but that is complete bullshit. Touchscreens did not make shitty games any better. Motion controls did not make shitty games any better. Increasing interactivity between the player and the game has historically never made a game any better. In many cases, it actually makes it worse. If I picked up a VR headset and loaded up Bubsy 3D, it wouldn't suddenly become a better, more fun game because I was playing inside of the universe. It would still be total ass. Besides, I'm not sure why you'd want to waste your time in a shitty MMO like that when there would have to be better VR games in this universe to play. In 2222, a virtual reality MMORPG named Sword Art Online is released in Japan. To enter this virtual world, you need to purchase the game and its accessory, the Nerve Gear. The Nerve Gear is what allows you to enter the world of SAO. It takes complete control of your mind as it blocks off signals from your brain to your body and vice versa. Once you're inside of the game, your brain controls the character within SAO. When SAO is released in Japan, it releases only 10,000 copies. Our protagonist, Kirito, has one and enters the world of Sword Art Online. Once in, he meets another player called Klein, and Kirito agrees to show Klein some tips in the game. It's established here that in SAO, you can't feel any pain. After talking and fighting for a while, Klein says he'll be back later and tries to log out of SAO. The only problem is, he cannot find the logout button. Kirito says that it's not a bug inside of the game, but he doesn't know what it is either. Suddenly, Kirito and Klein are teleported to the beginning of the game, along with every other player inside of it. A large figure appears and reveals itself to be Akihiko Kayaba, the developer of Sword Art Online. He says that there not being a logout button is deliberate because he has trapped everyone inside of Sword Art Online. Kayaba also mentions that the Nerve Gear in the real world cannot be removed from your head because, if tried, the Nerve Gear will fry your brain with microwave radiation and kill you. Over 200 players have been killed by this, as Kayaba says that their families attempted to take the Nerve Gear off their heads. International media outlets are covering the game and the deaths of the players. Kayaba then says that to log out of the game, you must clear the 100 floors within it, and if you die in the game, the Nerve Gear will destroy your brain and kill you. Kayaba gives everyone a mirror in their inventory system, and everyone begins changing into their real selves due to a feature inside of the Nerve Gear. After everyone freaks out, Kirito and Klein head out, but Klein says that he's going to wait for his other friends and tells Kirito to go ahead without him, despite Kirito wanting to take Klein. They depart, and that's the end of episode 1. After the credits roll on the episode, there's a scene telling us that after a month into the game, 2,000 players have died, and the first floor has yet to be cleared. In episode 2, a group of players decide to get together to try and defeat the floor 1 boss. It's at this point that Kirito meets Asuna, and parties up with her. Suddenly, the group meeting is interrupted by a player named Kibao. He vents his hatred for the beta testers of SAO, stating that they stole all the good locations to hunt and leveled up quicker than anyone, leaving the other players for dead due to their prior knowledge of the game. Another player named Agiel speaks up. Contrary to what Kibao believes, Agiel states that the beta testers left guidebooks at the item stores in the game which contained vital information about the game for free. He points out that everyone had equal access to these books, but a lot of people still died. After getting back to the subject at hand, the party leader, Diavel, says that they should look at their guidebooks for information on the Floor 1 boss, Ilfang, the Kobold Lord. He says that the group will meet tomorrow to take on the boss. During the night, Kirito meets up with Asuna. They eat and talk about their desire to play the game, despite the fact that they may be killed. In the morning, the party goes out for the dungeon. Once the party has depleted Ilfang's health enough, Diavel charges at him alone. Suddenly, Ilfang changes to a weapon that was not in the guidebook, and Kirito warns him to get out of there. Ilfang completely wrecks Diavel, and when Kirito goes to check on him, it's revealed that both Diavel and Kirito were beta testers. Diavel dies despite being offered a potion, and Kirito has an inner monologue. Kirito and Asuna team up to defeat Ilfang, while the rest of the party fights his minions. When Kirito is outmaneuvered by Ilfang, Agiel saves him and the rest of the party gangs up on Ilfang. Once Kirito is back to full health, he engages Ilfang again with Asuna and manages to kill him. The party celebrates, but Kayaba scolds all of them and says that Kirito let Diavel die and questions how he knew to tell Diavel to get out of the way. Another player then says that Kirito must have been a beta tester. The entire party starts getting angry because they think that he withheld information that could have kept Diavel alive. Kirito starts laughing and says it's not right to put him in the same level with the beta testers. He denounces them and says that they were all noobs and the people in the party right now are better than they were. Kirito says he fought a lot of monsters and bosses on other floors, and that's how he knew that Ilfang would change to a different weapon. Kayaba says that he's worse than a beta tester and calls him a cheater. Someone then proclaims that Kirito is a beta tester and a cheater, so he's a beater. Kirito admits to being a beater, but he does all of this to take the heat off the beta testers, because Kirito knows that they've done nothing wrong. Kirito then breaks off his party with Asuna and says that he's a solo player. In episode 3, Kirito joins a guild. They all sit down and discuss how Kirito saved them. One of the guild members asks Kirito his level and Kirito lies, responding with level 20 when he's really level 40. To make a long story short, one of the guild members named Sachi says that there's no point to playing SAO because she doesn't see why people should have to die over a stupid game. Kirito agrees. Sachi says she is extremely scared to die in the game. Kirito cheers her up by saying that she's going to survive because he'll be there to protect her. In the morning, one of the guild members goes off to buy a house that they have been saving all their money for. The rest stay, and one of them suggests that they go dungeon hunting so that they can buy things for inside of the house. He says that they should go to a higher level dungeon so that they can earn more money. Kirito initially disagrees, but he goes along with it. They find a hidden room and enter the room only to find out that it's a trap! And they get sealed into the room and every one of the guild members, including Sachi, is killed. Kirito somehow manages to escape and contacts an information broker about a special event happening that day. He'd heard a rumor that the event boss, Nicholas the Renegade, drops a special item which helps you restore the life of someone who has died. In a flashback, the remaining guild member who went off to buy a house berates Kirito for being a beater without telling anyone, and then kills himself. Kirito blames himself for the death of the guild members. In the present, while Kirito is looking for Nicholas the Renegade, he encounters Klein, who is also looking for the boss. Klein tries to convince Kirito to join his guild, but Kirito tells him to shut up. They get ambushed, and Klein tells Kirito to go on ahead. Kirito finds Nicholas, kills him, and returns to Klein. Kirito has the item that can be used to revive people, but it can only be used for 10 seconds after a person has died. He throws it to Klein because he has no use for it. During the night, Kirito gets a message that looks like Ramiel from Evangelion. It's from Sachi and was recorded before she died. She tells Kirito to not blame himself for her death, and then he cries. To speed this up, episode 4 revolves around Kirito using a girl named Silica and her pet as bait to attract a rogue group of players. He beats them all and throws them in jail. Episodes 5 and 6 see the return of Asuna as she and Kirito try to solve a murder mystery. These episodes establish that you cannot die within towns because they are safe zones. They also tell us that Agiel has become a merchant. Episode 7 introduces Lisbeth, a friend of Asuna's. She's a blacksmith. She helps Kirito forge a sword and tries to confess her love for him, but Asuna shows up and she doesn't. Episode 8 begins with Kirito telling us that it's been 2 years since the game started. Later, Kirito catches a rare meat and gets Asuna, who has maxed out her cooking skills, to cook it. The episode introduces Kuradil, who is Asuna's bodyguard from her guild, the Knights of the Blood. He doesn't see eye to eye with Kirito, and in the episode, they fight in a duel. Kirito dispatches him without any effort. Asuna remarked earlier in the episode that Kirito is at least 10 levels above Kuradil. Kirito and Asuna go into a dungeon towards the end of the episode and encounter a boss. In episode 9, Kirito and Asuna meet up with Klein after running from the boss. They're confronted by clearing forces who ask for information about the boss. They get trapped in the boss's room and many of them die. Kirito, Asuna, and Klein's guild rush in to save them, but the boss is too much. Kirito unveils his dual wielding skill and kills the boss. He almost dies and Asuna gets mad at him for it. She also says that she's taking a leave of absence from the Knights of the Blood to be with Kirito, but it isn't that simple. The leader of the guild, Heathcliff, says that if Kirito wants to take Asuna, he'll have to beat him to do it. In episode 10, Heathcliff beats Kirito and he's forced to join the Knights of the Blood. Kirito is tasked with clearing a dungeon with a player named Godfrey and Kuradil. All is well until Kuradil poisons Godfrey and Kirito with paralysis and kills Godfrey. He comes close to killing Kirito, but Asuna shows up and Kirito kills him. In the night, Kirito gets laid and decides that he and Asuna should get married. In episode 11, Kirito and Asuna are married and have taken a break from the guild. They're adventuring in the forest when they encounter a small child. They bring her back to their cabin. She wakes up and tells Asuna and Kirito that her name is Yui. She starts calling them Mommy and Daddy. Yui cannot remember anything about her past because she has amnesia. Kirito and Asuna decide to go to the town of Beginnings to see if Yui has any family. When they do, they notice that the town is pretty empty. Suddenly, they hear a woman screaming and go check it out. A couple of Liberation Army players are harassing a daycare teacher and kids for tax money. Asuna kicks their asses and they run off. After this, Yui looks up to the sky and faints. Episode 12 begins with everyone in the daycare center for children in SAO. There's a knock on the front door. A player named Yulier from the Liberation Army has come to apologize for the soldiers before and asks for the help of Kirito and Asuna. Her leader, Thinker, has been trapped in a high-level dungeon by none other than Kibao, who managed to gain political power in the 2 years within SAO. Asuna and Kirito agree to help, and Yui insists that she go with them. They find Thinker in the dungeon, but Yulier sets off a trap, and a powerful unknown creature appears. The creature beats the shit out of Asuna and Kirito, and right before it kills them, Yui stops it miraculously. She undergoes a transformation and kills the creature. It's now that Yui begins explaining that she is a mental health counseling AI programmed by Cardinal. Cardinal is the system that controls everything within Sword Art Online. Yui was made to comfort and assist players' mental states. However, when SAO launched, Cardinal completely banned Yui from interacting with the other players. Yui was condemned to watching the players' mental states deteriorate as some of them went insane and others committed suicide. This caused Yui to become backed up with errors until one day she saw two players who were genuinely happy in the game. She tried to get as close to them as she could without being detected by Cardinal. The two players were Kirito and Asuna. Yui says that she has now disobeyed the Cardinal's directive by deleting the monster from before. The system will now delete her. The Cardinal system does so, but Kirito hacks the system before time runs out and gets a piece of Yui before she was completely destroyed. Kirito says that he can recreate her once they're out of the game. In episode 13, Asuna and Kirito partake in a fishing event but are called back to the Knights of the Blood Guild. Heathcliff tells them that their recon team was wiped out. They walked into a boss room and were locked in. When the doors opened, they were gone and there was no sign of the boss. Heathcliff says that they're going to launch an all-out attack against the boss with the largest number of players. Kirito says that he'll fight, but Asuna's safety is his #1 priority. During the wait to get players, Kirito asks Asuna if instead of fighting the boss, she stays there. Asuna gets angry and says that there's no point because she says she wouldn't be able to forgive herself if she didn't go and Kirito died. She says that she'd kill herself. Asuna then ponders on what's going on in the real world. A few weeks after SAO was launched, a lot of players suddenly went offline. That's when they were being transported to hospitals around Japan. Her point is that if they're all in hospitals on life support, they don't have much time to live anyways. It doesn't matter if they clear the game anymore because everyone is on a time limit. Asuna wants to survive and get married to Kirito in real life. Later, Kirito and Asuna show up where everyone is going to fight the boss. Klein and Agiel show up to show their support in the battle. Heathcliff shows up and they all enter the dungeon. Heathcliff gives a pep talk and they enter the boss room. Nothing happens immediately, but they realize that the reason the boss wasn't visible in the room when it was previously checked is because it was on the roof. The Skull Reaper comes down to the floor and kills 2 people in a single hit, which surprises everyone. Despite this, everyone attacks the Skull Reaper. In the final episode, episode 14, they defeat the Skull Reaper. While everyone is resting, Kirito looks over at Heathcliff. Without any warning, Kirito attacks him, only to reveal that Heathcliff is an immortal object. Kirito says that ever since the beginning of SAO, it's bugged him that he doesn't know where Kayaba has been watching over all the players. He's come to the conclusion that Heathcliff is in fact Akihiko Kayaba. Kirito says that he first suspected that something was up during their duel, when Kayaba blocked one of his attacks way too fast. Kayaba says that Kirito was so strong and so fast that he had to engage the assist mode within the game. He admits to being Kayaba and says that he is SAO's final boss. Kayaba says that he thought Kirito would be the one standing before him at the very end. He says that the dual wielding skill was only given to a single player, the one with the fastest reaction times, the hero of the story. Another player tries to attack Kayaba, but he paralyzes him along with everyone else except for Kirito. Kayaba says that Kirito deserves a reward for figuring out who he was. He says that he can challenge him to a duel, and if he wins, the game will be over. Kirito accepts with the condition that if he loses, Asuna can't kill herself. Kayaba turns off his immortality and they fight. Kirito tries his best, but even his sword breaks during the fight with Kayaba. Kayaba is right about to kill Kirito when Asuna jumps in the way. She is slashed instead of Kirito and killed. Kayaba then stabs Kirito and he dies as well. Kirito then comes back to life and stabs Kayaba, which kills him. Then the announcer of SAO remarks that the game has been cleared. Kirito wakes up in the sky of Aincrad and is met by Asuna, who is still alive. Kayaba is up there as well. Kirito asks why he's done all of this. Kayaba says that he forgot a long time ago and gives a monologue about how it was his dream to create a castle in a world. He wanted to go away to this world. He congratulates them on clearing the game and then leaves. Kirito and Asuna then sit together and talk about their real names and how they have to meet up in real life. Kirito then wakes up in the real world in a hospital. He removes his nerve gear and gets out of the bed to find Asuna. And that is the end of the Aincrad Arc of Sword Art Online. Here's the moment you've all been waiting for. The moment where I tear these horrible 14 episodes a new asshole. Before I do that though, I'd like to say something to the light novel readers of Sword Art Online. It's to my knowledge that many of the things that I'm about to point out are talked about or explained in the light novel. I understand that. What you have to understand is that I'm not talking about the light novel. The light novel and the anime are two completely different entities, as they should be. A light novel is not to an anime what a guide or a manual is to a video game. So please, don't try to justify how shit this anime is by saying that it's all explained in the light novel. And don't be mad at me for pointing out the flaws in the anime. Be mad at the anime for giving your light novel series such a shitty name. Adaptations of popular novels should strive to not only accurately portray their source material, but to improve on it if necessary and bring fans to the franchise. And they very well can't do that if the adaptation is shit. Now then, where the fuck do I even begin with all this bullshit? There is so much wrong with these 14 episodes that I couldn't even begin to wrap my head around how something could be so poorly written. If SAO had any more holes, you could order it on a sandwich at Subway. Let's begin on episode 1 with the concept of Sword Art Online. I personally find this entire concept ridiculous. Kayaba Akihiko traps 10,000 people inside of a video game. If they die in the game, they die in real life. If you try to take their nerve gears off, they die. If Sword Art Online had gone on for maybe a week or two, the concept could fall within the realm of plausibility. However, SAO goes on for over 2 years. That's 2 years that the surrounding world allowed this to take place. It is outrageous to think that Kayaba Akihiko would not have been found and arrested within this time. And even if he wasn't, people couldn't hack the game from the outside. Kirito showed us that he's capable of hacking the game from the inside, so this makes no sense at all. What Sword Art Online would have been to this world would be the largest hostage situation in recorded history. Bullshit, it goes on for 2 years. SAO going on for 2 years also creates other large problems within the plot, namely the safety of the players. Asuna mentions that at one point, many players went offline while being transferred to hospitals. Okay, that does make sense. What doesn't make sense is the safety of the characters who lived alone. A prime example is Klein. How the fuck is Klein even alive? Klein lives alone, and unless some massive sweep of IP addresses was done to find players that hadn't been reported to hospitals, Klein should have died of starvation, as should have all the other players who didn't have families or lived alone. But nope, this is never once brought up in the anime at all. Another gigantic problem in SAO comes in the form of the nerve gear. This sort of device existing in our lifetimes borders on impossible, but that's where our suspension of disbelief kicks in. That's fine. However, we're immediately kicked back into reality when SAO abuses the nerve gear's logic and creates a bunch of plot holes with it. First off, Kirito says that pain cannot be felt in SAO. Yet throughout the entire anime, whenever someone is hurt, they always wince or start screaming. The logical argument for why this is happening is that it's a psychological reaction, but of course, the anime never tells us this or even implies it. Secondly, if you can't feel pain, why would you be able to feel cold like Lisbeth does, taste anything like various people do in the anime, or feel pleasure when having sex? To put it extremely simply, the nervous system doesn't work like this. In real life, there's people that suffer from a disorder called congenital analgesia, or congenital insensitivity to pain. These people cannot feel pain because the neurons that send pain signals to their brains are blocked off. And guess what? Most of the people with this disorder cannot smell, feel hot and cold, and often have a difficult time experiencing pleasure. All of which are done in SAO with no problem despite the fact that they can't feel pain. At the beginning of this video, I mentioned that SAO is not about a video game, but a romance that just happens to take place in a video game. This cannot possibly ring more true if you actually examine the game like I have. So many things are glossed over, it's ridiculous. For example, leveling, which is huge in MMORPGs, is completely shafted. In episode 1, Kirito is level 1. In episode 3, he's level 40. In episode 4, he's level 78. And in episode 10, after the 2-year time skip, he's only level 96. My point here is that how someone levels up, or at what rate they do, is never explained, and Kirito's arbitrary level jumps prove that. So on top of SAO being shown to be a shitty game with little variation, and leveling never explained, SAO, the anime, falls back on stupid romance. Episodes 1, 2, 10, and 13 are the only fucking episodes that move the plot along. The rest of the episodes are filler. However, they're filler in the same way that Bleach's Fullbring arc is filler. They're technically canon, but you could take a large chunk of them out because they're worthless and the plot could move along without a hitch. The remaining episodes in SAO deal with Kirito meeting other women like Silica and Lisbeth, or bonding with Asuna and marrying her. All of this at the expense of the actual game and anime. Speaking of Asuna, she is supposed to be very powerful, but we never see her training. In fact, the only skill she's supposedly maxed out is her cooking skill, and everyone is always mentioning how famous she is, but never what she's actually famous for. And this brings me to my next point. Kirito is overpowered as fuck. I just mentioned that he went from level 1 to 78 in 4 episodes, but he's always shown dicking around. He has never actually shown training at all. Give me one good reason why Kirito is as strong as he is. Keep in mind, this is the same guy who tanked like 7 players attacking him at once. The same guy who took down the event boss when 2 different guilds were looking for him. The same guy who took out Kuradil in 5 seconds, and the same guy who was so damn strong that he forced the programmer of the game to cheat in his fight with him. The argument that he's strong because he's a beta tester is bullshit. If that's true, why aren't any of the other beta testers as strong as him? Hell, Kirito himself said that the other beta testers were noobs. Other than this, there's no real reason except for him being the protagonist that he's this strong. The same goes for Asuna, as I already mentioned, except she's even worse because she's never shown at any time dedicating time to fighting. She's maxed out her cooking skill and is popular for being popular? Everything I've said up until this point brings me to the final nail in the coffin for SAO, that being the characters' actions, and some more plot holes. Stupid character actions strike as early as the 2nd episode when Kibao says that the beta testers are evil. This is so stupid it hurts. Beta testers in games make sure that Sword Art Online is not Sword Art Over the Road Racing. They test for bugs and report them so that they can be fixed. They're the only reason the game is as stable as it is. But let's hate them anyways for reasons that don't even make sense. And what Kirito does for the beta testers at the end of episode 2 is also stupid, because instead of trying to reason with all these people, he just takes the blame himself, which doesn't even work in the grand scheme of things. Kirito as a character can only be described as a lying, arrogant sack of shit. We have already discussed that bosses in SAO do not respawn, so players who don't feel like endangering themselves in the game can live in safe zones and wait for the clearing forces and army to clear the game. When Sachi mentions this because she's not a complete idiot, Kirito agrees but says it's okay because he'll protect her, which encourages Sachi to fight, which gets her killed. If you're playing SAO for fun, like many in the game are, you're a fucking idiot, plain and simple. SAO is a death game, but it's a death game you can choose to participate in. It's like being thrown into Battle Royale and having the choice whether to sit and wait with Kitano while everyone kills each other off, or actually participating in the goddamn event like Kiriyama. Keep in mind, Kiriyama is insane and the only person who willingly signed up for Battle Royale. Meanwhile, everyone else who willingly participates in SAO is happy and smiling with rarely ever a care in the world. Another aspect of Kirito's character, or lack thereof, is his personality. He barely has one, and when he does, he's often an asshole to most of his friends. The most blatant example of this was the Lisbeth episode, where he's almost constantly berating her as if he were Stone Cold Kirito Austin.
If it breaks, then that's too bad!
Don't freak out! But I'm falling in love with you!
What?
There's also the fact that Kirito is a goddamn loser with no life or friends, which is why despite him being extremely overpowered, the game isn't cleared within 2 years. If he truly cared about getting back to the real world, he'd be a permanent part of the clearing force. Instead, he's a solo player. And oh god, Kirito being a solo player is the worst. Kirito says that he's a solo player at the end of episode 2, and at the beginning of episode 3, he's in a guild. In episode 4, he teams up with Silica. In episodes 5 and 6, he teams up with Asuna. In episode 7, he teams up with Lisbeth. And only at the beginning of episode 8, after the 2-year time skip, do we see him alone. And in that same episode, not only does he team up with Asuna again, but by episode 11, they're fucking married. So explain to me, why does this stupid little shit keep saying he's a solo player? Oh, right, because it's edgy. He's edgy because he's alone. What a cool guy. Some of the players even refer to him as the solo player, as if he were the only one doing the solo act. And you know what? He very well may be, because being a solo player in a goddamn MMORPG death game is a stupid idea. Everyone else in the fucking game is either in a guild or not fighting at all. But Kirito has to be the dark and edgy solo player. Another thing about Kirito is that he's clearly a bitch. After losing to Heathcliff, the first thing that comes to his mind is, "Oh, he cheated. He's a cheater." Just because Heathcliff reacted very fast to an attack. Kirito says himself that there are thousands of sword skills, one of which could have hypothetically helped Heathcliff in a situation like this. But Kirito is beaten, and he's the mighty god of SAO, so if he lost, whoever beat him must clearly be cheating. Ugh. You want to know who SAO's best character is? It's Agiel. Not only does Agiel realize that the beta testers were not bad people because they left free guides for parts of the game at the stores, he also realizes that SAO is a death game and needs to be treated as such. So he becomes a merchant in a safe zone where he cannot possibly be killed. The only time he ventures into fighting again after this is during the Skull Reaper fight, and that's to support his friends in combat. Asuna turns into a tsundere halfway into the show, and a helpless one at that, because she needs Kirito to deal with Kuradil. Klein is largely okay, but he does creep a little when Kirito mentions that he has a little sister. Silica is a dumb loli, Lisbeth is just waifu bait,
My wife is coming to life.
and Kayaba is fucking terrible. If the intent with Kayaba was to create a morally gray character, they failed. Although a strange example, Dexter Morgan is a fine illustration of a morally gray character done right.
Am I evil? Am I good? I'm done asking those questions. I don't have the answers. Does anyone?
Dexter has a clear moral conflict within himself that presents itself during season 2 of the series. Keep in mind, all of this is shown and not told. This is another problem with SAO. Things are told to us, but not shown. People being killed by the nerve gear? Told, not shown. Those 2,000 players being killed within a month of the game launching? Told, not shown. Kirito saving Sachi's guild? Told, not shown. Kayaba's dream to create a sky castle and his path to doing it? Told, not shown. And told in 1 minute or two before the anime ends in one of the dumbest monologues of all time. Not to mention, Kayaba simply forgets his motives for doing all of what he did in SAO. Never in any medium that I have read or seen has a villain simply forgotten why they're doing what they're doing. And with that, I am done. I'm sure that I have missed things here and there, and yes, while SAO does have semi-decent animation and a good soundtrack, it is not worth watching. I have seen these 14 episodes now in both Japanese and English. There is no distinction between the quality, they're both horrible. There is nothing, and I repeat, nothing redeemable or good about the Aincrad Arc of Sword Art Online. Between the stupid characters, the idiotic decisions of these stupid characters, the plot holes, the bad writing, and the insultory plot, time could be better spent watching a dog lick its balls. This is why the Aincrad Arc of Sword Art Online gets the final rating of, say it with me, rest in piss.